Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. The last episode of the season. Issam, thank you for being here. Today we're going to discuss the Sluitingsprijs Oostmalle.
Absolutely, last one of the season. Thank you for having me.
It feels a bit like New Year's Eve. What a season it's been. So much has happened. Wow. Like the reflecting state here. Nice to see this race broadcasted on the public broadcaster again. It's been pay-per-view in Belgium for a couple of years, which made it very hard to actually watch the race in the Netherlands. Course was quite nice. The weather here is improving. Really, the cyclocross season is over in every way possible. Oostmalle, the Bulgarian Championships, the UCI calendar is now empty all the way until August, September. Let's dive into the racing, Issam. We're going to start with the women's racing. It was not a very eventful race. Brandt attacked in the second, third lap of the race, really powered away, took another victory, her 11th win of the season. Behind that, Van der Heijden, who didn't have any injuries after that nasty crash in Brussels, finished second. The cameras went to the battle for third place because Sanne Cant, who was retiring, spent a very large portion of the race dueling with Julie Brouwers. In the final lap, they slowed down, preparing for the sprint, but from the background, Denise Betsema and Helene Clauzel came back. Cant never saw Clauzel on the finish straight and got out-sprinted, so Clauzel clinched third ahead of Cant. And before we actually go and talk about the racing, it's the last race of Cant, and I feel we should start with that because that was the biggest event of the day, also bigger than the men's race. What a season, what a career it's been for Cant. This season was very emotional. She had a few instances where she could really showcase herself at the best of her ability. The World Championships in Louvain with the 9th place were a very good conclusion of her elite career. 4th in Lille, also earlier in this season, her racing was quite good at instances. It was a worthy final season. Somebody who's been racing at the highest level for over 15 years. Her career started 20 years ago in 2004-2005. She was a 15-16 then, but there were no junior races, there were no youth races. She was tossed in with the elite. Imagine if you're at that point still waiting to turn 15 and you're just thrown into the deep end. Good luck. Race against Hilde Quintens and race against Daphne van der Brandt, Hanka Koepvernagel. Good luck. Look where we are now. Standalone races. This summer, junior women's races will become de facto mandated. There will be fines imposed on races that don't have them. So much has happened in such a short time in the career of one rider. And I wonder what's, for you, the standout moment of Sanne Cant's career, or how will you remember her legacy?
I will remember it as someone that always was in a fighting spirit. I think that she, as you say and state, it wasn't easy at all to move up through the ranks and get better and better. And she had defied the odds in a way in terms of how Belgium looked at women's cyclocross at the time, and was the main reason why a lot had changed. And I think that if I have to look into the moments that Cant had, and she had quite a few, I think for me though, the one that I can cherish the most is probably the one in BLS. That fighting spirit there, being able to beat Vos. I think that one she was in a position in which Vos arguably was going to win it. That was, again, it showcased that despite the fact that Cant was in a losing position, she was still fighting, for every gap that there was. And even if she was behind, she would still be trying to race. Cant was someone that doesn't really give up that easily. And I think that is something that we can remember from her career. Someone that really, in the last couple of years, it wasn't a very victorious couple of years. But I think that nevertheless, it was, her moments, the world titles, the Belgium, the national titles. It has been a very illustrious career. It's someone that we can highly respect. It's going to be interesting to see what she will do next. I mean, I think you'll probably have some words as well on the career of Cant.
I will remember her legacy as somebody who has had such an impact on the development of women's cyclocross. And that's not to say that Daphne van der Brandt and Koepvernagel, the legends before her, didn't have an impact. They were the ones that got these races to put on women's races. But because because Cant has that Belgian flag behind her name, she turned the Belgian eyes, which is the epicenter of the sport, to the women's racing, and their races moved from 9:30 in the morning to 1. They moved from being shown in a 1-minute highlight to being broadcasted. I think the B Postbank Trophy was the first to make the commitment to televise all the women's races, I believe in the 2014-15 season. That really was a turning point, because from there on they got coverage. They were mentioned in the papers in more than just one paragraph under the men's results. The first time Cant actually really got some media attention or significant attention was actually over a fight at the European Championships. There were disagreements between her and Joyce van der Beke in the chase, and then afterwards there was a rumor that the mom of Cant went to fight with van der Beke and punched her. That was not true at all, but that was the publicity that Cant got. Her second time in the publicity was when she was looking to potentially sign with the team of Hans van Kasteren, which is now known as Baloise, but back then it was called Telenet Fidea. She didn't do that. She needed to pay a compensation, I think, of 30,000 euros, which is also telling for the increase of money in women's cycling. So those are more at the broader level, the legacy. And in terms of races, the Valkenburg World Championships, I think I've mentioned this before, really stood out. It was a course that she wasn't favored on, but she digged. She went really, really deep. She emptied the tank, finished on top there, fighting against Katie Compton. Was a great race, and despite I was a bit younger, I was a bit more Dutch nationalistic at the time, I would have preferred to see Brandt win there, and the Bogense World Championships were definitely a low for the Dutch team, but yeah, those were definitely the prime years of Cant. She ends here with a 4th place, Issam. She was a bit upset with that, but in the end she was also realistic enough to realize she messed up. She said, I dropped the pace too much in the final lap. I never saw Clausel coming. It is what it is. I'm also not going to be too worried about it. There's a big party tonight with almost all of the cyclocross riders attending.
They will party that away, missing out on the podium. And I think in the end, sure, the disappointment was there for a brief moment. But I think also with the whole ceremony afterwards on the podium, and as you say, the party that will be kicking off somewhere in a couple of hours, I think that will all be forgotten, and the focus will be on the goodbye, the final goodbye, and what is coming. I think, I think we can see Cant in a couple of years, or maybe this year already, doing something within the sport. I feel that expertise will not be lost, and maybe she can, on the bike she definitely meant a lot to the sport, but who knows, maybe off the bike she can also do a thing or two for cyclocross.
Apart from Cant, it was then in the end Brandt who took the victory quite easily. Brandt hasn't been training at all this week. This is her 2-week rest period before she rebuilds in Spain through a training camp to the Spring Classic. She's supposed to start her road season in Milan-San Remo. After that, she is planning to peak for Paris-Roubaix. Hopefully, she hopes at least that she will get the victory there. That is the reason that she continued racing on the road. I think it's very good that she continues racing on the road. It really helps you provide a good endurance base for the cyclocross season. Today was just another level. She was the freshest today. It's the end of the season. Van der Heijden said she was kind of sad it's over because she's feeling quite good, but it wasn't good enough today to challenge like she did last weekend.
Yeah, I think that Brandt had just a very good day. I think that it looked just a little bit better, and kind of know that if Brandt has everything in the right order and is able to make her moves, then it's going to be very difficult for Van der Heijden to beat her. And I think that is what we kind of saw today. It was just Brandt just that little bit better. Van der Heijden tried, but it was just not enough. And then you have to just accept second. And I think, as you say, I think that Van der Heijden is arguably relatively happy how she finished the season. And overall, this season has been a very solid outing, I think, for Van der Heijden. And you will always have that feeling. Some will have the feeling of why did the season not end 2 weeks ago, and others will want to extend it a couple more weekends. But that's kind of what it's always there's always something happening in the end of the season in which, riders feel that it should be longer or shorter, and in the end, it's just very hard to place. And I think, for me, arguably, it's good that we are rounding up the season, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely been long enough also for the riders. That's something that was impressive about Clauzel. She started her season all the way in September. She raced the USCX series, took a ton of victories. I think she swept the entire series, then came back to Europe. She had a phase in the season in which she definitely paid the price for all those races. She wasn't that strong in November. She managed to repack herself after the Christmas period through a rest break, then a training camp in Spain towards the Benidorm World Cup and towards the World Championships. Just missed out on the top 10 the week before in Hogerheide, but she already showed, hey, the form is there. Finishes 8th at the World Championships. It's been a good season for her. Two things. First of all, it was funny that after this podium, like, you could hear some of the audio coming through, and Clauzel was talking to Brandt, like, where do I go? I don't know. I've never been on the podium of a big race. She's like, oh, but weren't you on the podium of the US races and in France? Yeah, but those are small races. It's not like a podium, a stage that we need to get up to. And then Brandt was like, oh, I'll show you where to go. That's, I think, telling for why Clauzel was so eager to sprint. Cant before the race said, I don't want any precedence. I want to win this race or get the podium purely on merit. I'm going to give it my everything. She was aggressive from the start. We already alluded to the mistake she made at the end. But it was funny to see the narrative switch a bit, because Brouwers, they were saying, oh, Brouwers, she should sprint for it, of course. No gifts. Cant doesn't want a gift. She doesn't get these opportunities every time. But then when Clauzel comes back from a position from which Clauzel, certainly herself, never expected to finish on the podium anymore, oh, of course, the French woman doesn't know that this is Cant's final race so close to home, and she spoils the party. Just a funny little narrative change there, when, of course, when you're in this situation, Issam, every rider has an incentive to sprint. And if you're going to talk about gifts and not gifts, then you can argue Crelan Corendon, why didn't they race in block at the beginning of the race, first 3 positions, let Cant go, block the rest? Or Van der Heijden, why doesn't she drop back when Cant is at 5 seconds? It's just racing at the end of the day, and for everyone there will always be an incentive late in the season to go for a podium spot in a race that's broadcasted on Belgian TV.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Clauzel also, she had to, in a way, because it was just, this season, as you say, and as she stated herself, the races that she won in the States for sure are something, but they were not broadcasted. They are definitely smaller than what we had today, and Oostmalle for sure is not a make or break for your season, but it's still broadcasted and it gets the views, and it's there. So if you get that opportunity, you have to go for it. And I think that Cant was also, Cant probably didn't really want to have any presence today. I felt that maybe in the eyes of Crelan, as you were stating, they could have done something, but it's hard. And, if Cant is not really pushing for that, I don't think that within the team they will try something like that. And they were arguably thinking, with Brandt and the way she was racing the last 2 weekends, there was maybe a chance if Brandt didn't really have her day. And I think it's also very hard to just plan these things. And in the end, it didn't hurt anyone's day. Clauzel was very happy. Cant got happy after, and also a bit emotional. And I think in the end, we just had, good racing for third.
The women's season is over. It's been a quite nice season. A lot of entertaining races. We'll touch upon that a bit more. I'll just run you down the top 10 for a final time. Brandt with the win ahead of Van der Heijden and Clauzel. Cant was 4th ahead of Brouwers. Betsma finished 6th. Her contract with Paul Sauze ended after this race. That was expected. We alluded to that contract situation over Christmas. She got an extension to the end of the season, but is now out of contract. Hartog finished 7th, Molengraaf 8th, 9th for Riberol, and Worst 10th after a early crash in, I think it was the second corner. Unfortunate season for Worst, but again, we'll do some reviews in which we'll go over this a bit more. Then to the men's side, Issam, not the most entertaining race there either. The start was a real battle towards the first corner. Luckily, there was no mass crash like there was last year. We've seen that a couple of times actually, because this is on a former airfield, and while the initial start is slightly uphill, it quickly becomes a slight downhill, so you really slingshot it towards the first corner. Didn't take all too long for Nieuwenhuis to ride away, and he dominated, took victory. Zweek fought back from 20th position to clinch second with a spectacular final lap. He jumped to the earlier escaped Toon van de Bos, who he then dragged to third place. Niels van der Putten, who had been in second place for a while, eventually needed to settle for fourth, while Michael van Toerenhout crashed after also being in podium contention. Nieuwenhuis making the best of his season. Issam, we shouldn't be too surprised that he is the freshest rider at the moment. He did say, yeah, I've been training a lot and it's been mentally very challenging, and he's completely right in those things. But at the end of the day, if your season starts in January, you're going to be much fresher here than if you're Zweek, whose season started in October, or than if you're Toon Aerts, who actually had his season start pretty much in August because he was peaking for the Gravel World Championships.
Yeah, completely. And I think, it was also maybe just very eager, and also the motivation will just be a tiny bit different because, Zweek today, if you look at his last lap and the way he was racing in the later phase of the race, he was super strong. And I think that if he didn't mess up his start the way he did and was so far back, who knows? Maybe we would have seen a battle between Zweek and Nieuwenhuis. I wouldn't per se say that Nieuwenhuis would lose that, or the other way around, that he would win it. But I think that would have been obviously a bit more entertaining. But it wasn't meant to be, and it was so fast that it's just when you lose the time there, it's just very hard to get it back. And at a certain point, it was just very obvious that none of the guys behind Nieuwenhuis would get back. And then it's for Zweek, the way he then helped Toon van de Bos in a way who struggled this season. Let's be honest, it wasn't the greatest of seasons for Van de Bos, but for him then to give him that gap in the last lap, he was able to bridge that gap again. But at least Van de Bos was able to hold on to third. I think that was a very nice gesture from Zweek, because he was in a position there that race was basically done. He didn't really need to do that, but he still did, and I think it was a small gesture, but it was arguably enough for Van de Bos to to feel much better about his season, arguably.
Toon van de Bos, as you said, it's a positive. He can definitely take this into the summer. That's what this is important for. If you've had a bad season, if you just have that one result that you can pull yourself up to and think, okay, I know deep inside, if everything goes my way, yes, Van de Bos had help from his teammates, but whatever, right? Like, he will definitely have some morale and some confidence and not end the season with, ooh, this entire season has been quite bad and it's going to be difficult for me, my contract, how's everything going to look? Those are completely different situations that you carry on. And that's the thing with cross. Like, if you have a bad season, it takes really long before you can hit the ground running again. In football, yeah, you end the season poorly, perhaps you miss out on the championship, but a few months later, you're expected to be there again and the competition is beginning again. That's not the case in cyclocross. So in that regard, what's always the case here, that the positives you can take with you. If it's a bit negative season ending, you'll just blow it off, post-world championships, whatever. At least if you have something positive in your season, it's important. And for Jordi Corsos, this race will be a positive. Young riders can always show themselves a bit more. I agree with you that Zweek could have been in the contention for the win, but to me, most impressive was not necessarily his final lap. It was the ride of Corsos. He beat riders like Van der Haar and Aerts. It's much needed. Yes, it's late in the season, but it's also been a long season for Corsos. He's showcasing his talent. We also saw the Bruikere, the silver medalist at the U23 World Championships, up there early on in the race. And then there's a few riders retiring here. Issam Adams finishes 8th on his final race. Van Kessel. We also had Thijs Aerts and then a few more smaller riders. But yeah, it's a couple of sub-top riders leaving. I thought Herreigers, the Belgian commentator, had a interesting observation, something I never really thought about, but he's like, yeah, pretty much you see that there's the possibility to be a professional cyclist, cyclocross rider for about 15, maybe 25 at most Belgians, and yeah, these riders, they are seeing their jobs disappear as there's a lot of young, stronger riders coming in, and then they draw the conclusion it's time to retire while I'm still performing at a somewhat decent level.
It comes both ways. It's a bit like the the talent that is coming through, the teams that might make a decision and want to make some space for some talent, and then it's always a bit easier to dump the guys that are a bit older. And as you say, it's also for one part, it's being scared of having that 1 year too many in your careers in which you're just basically making your laps, and that's basically it. And I think arguably we can see now that there is quite some talent coming through the ranks. It's quite a lot, and I think that definitely could have an influence on how the field is shaping up and certain riders making that decision. There's obviously also some external factors that play a role, and I think that it is, for some it is maybe a bit more personal than for others, and a lot of factors play in, but that definitely plays a role. And it's always like that in cyclocross. It's always after a couple of years we just get just a wave of certain riders that retire that were in the subtop or just about there, and they have to make room for the others that are coming through the ranks, the talents that are coming up.
Cyclocross is not a big sport at the end of the day. There's not that many teams, there's not that many spots. You have a few top-level riders in Belgium that make really, really good money. Then, especially in recent years, if they do well on the road, that adds significantly to their salary. But a rider like Iserbiet, a rider like Van Toerenhout, they make plenty of money through prize money, through their salary, through external sponsors and such. And then you have a large middle group which makes a fine living, and it's maybe not that much money relatively if you compare it to other sports, but if you compare it to an everyday job, they still make quite a lot of money for doing what at the end of the day is their passion. And then there's also quite a lot of riders in cyclocross that don't make that much money at all. They ride for some support in terms of race support, so they get a camper van, or they get at least a bike and wheels and tires. But then their salary, it's not necessarily more than 1,000 to 3,000 euros. That's not a lot of money. That's around minimum wage, but they do it out of passion. It's not that big of a sport, and there's also a whole lot of people who just work a job next to it, which is even more common if you go look outside of Belgium. Considering that the number of spots are so limited, and then look at these riders. It's Thijs Aerts, a former junior world champion, was a two-time Belgian champion as a U23. Van Kessel, a bit older, but also at one point a big talent. In 2009, silver medalist at the junior world championships. He got a podium at the world championships as a U23 as well. He was talented, but both of them never really reached the top. Van Kessel a bit more than Aerts. Aerts also definitely overshadowed with his brother being a top-tier elite rider, kind of in a way similar to Geert Wellens. And if you then consider those facts that, they have shown it at occasions, especially Van Kessel has a much longer career. I'll remember some World Cup podiums, including one in Hogerheide, final World Cup of the season. Telenet Fidea back then went 1, 2, 3. But as soon as those results start to decline, considering that those spaces are limited, then these are the type of riders that miss out, and it's kind of the circle of life at the moment.
There is no room for that. It's very hard in a way, especially cyclocross. As you say, it's small, and I think that the positive that we can take from it is they definitely, if we look at least to Van Kessel and Adams, they were definitely able to have their results even in their later phase of their career. It wasn't the best. Van Kessel definitely didn't have his greatest moments, but he was still able to have decent results. And for Thijs Aerts, it was a bit more of a struggle, and I feel that he definitely, as you say, was more in the shadow of his brother, but he also had somewhat his moments, especially when he was with his brother in Fidea. But yeah, sometimes, as you say, a bit mid-tier, and that is also part of cyclocross. I mean, we're watching the front, and we are giving most of our attention to the top 5 and sometimes the top 10, but there is more to it. There is a whole lot of riders that are behind that, and that also has to be replaced in a way, and it gets highlighted now because we are in Oostmalle and there's not really much to talk about, but in the next couple of seasons we will totally not think about it.
I found myself reflecting on who of these riders had the best career, and then I also thought, well, this is kind of a silly comparison because what do these riders have in common apart from the fact that they're retiring now? I did come to the conclusion that Van Kessel is probably the most high-profile rider on the men's side that is hanging up his bike. I like the fact that they actually have a hook there where they hang it up to. Van Kessel has World Cup podiums, and he has a few relatively important wins in races like Mole. He has World Cup podiums, as said. He has more podiums in the other televised series, but at the end of the day, Adams has also had a very solid career. He's been up there. He's been fighting uphill battles. The teams didn't really want to take chances on him. I never really figured out the reason why, but his results have been good. He's been significantly positioning himself to continue racing World Cups through smart point chasing and also good performances, and I really like the years that he raced for the Hollebeek-Hoeve team, and it made me remember here in Oostmalle when he was treating all his rivals that he'd raced with the entire season to ice cream through his sponsor, and then that team stopped, but luckily it was picked up by Athletes for Hope, Lotto X Oats as it is now. The top 10 here is the final one. Nieuwenhuis, Zweek, Van de Bos, Van de Potten, Van de Putten. It's been a long season, but it's still Niels van de Putten and not Van de Potten. Jordi Kors is in 5th, ahead of Lars van der Haar. Toon Aerts in 7th, Jens Adams in 8th, Cameron Mason in 9th, and Victor van de Putten in 10th. To know if you have anything else to remark.
Did we talk about Van Toerenhout very briefly or not? The crash and you know how he felt, how his race basically was somewhat over after that crash. You know, no motivation, and that is also part of that last couple of races that we have in the later phase of the season. That when something like that happens, despite the fact that Van Toerenhout probably had the legs to be on the podium, you just kind of don't really give any F's about the race, and you just go on with your day. Finish the race somewhere outside the top 30 or something, and you just focus on what is coming next and the season that will come will follow, and you're basically now in the rest period, and then you will prepare. Some will do something on the road, the others will do some gravel, and slowly but surely that will all come together at the start of the next cyclocross season.
27th place for Van Toerenhout in the end. He was quite hurt also. It did look quite severe, the injury to his knee, but he got up and finished the race. His teammate Issam didn't start. He has the typical cycling injury of a narrow artery going towards his legs. His left-right balance was very, very big. There was a big imbalance there is what I tried to say. He underwent surgery, is off the bike for 60 weeks now. It's the same condition as Verdonschot had, but on one side instead of on both legs. So that's it. The results of the Bulgarian Championships have not been uploaded yet to the UCI website, so unfortunately can't give you the very, very last bit of racing of the season, but that's it. Issam, thank you so much.
We are saved from some bad name pronunciations, I guess. No, but thank you for having me. It was a pleasure covering with you the season, and yeah, we have, I think, something planned for the off season. I don't know. You probably know that more than I do, and yeah, thank all the listeners for listening as well, bearing with us through the season. It was a pleasure to be on here.
Saying like I'm the one planning. You came up with the idea. You said we should do team reviews and give some numbers to some riders, give them some ratings, give some team ratings, identify the biggest needs for the off season. So that's what we're going to be doing. We'll have most likely first a season review podcast in which we'll go through some key moments of the season. Maybe this week, maybe next week, we'll need to figure out the schedules a little bit also as the Ramadan is starting for you soon, Issam. So good luck with that. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you for all the support this season, and we will be back fairly soon with covering a little bit more of cyclocross, but also slowly but surely shifting our attention a bit to the road and mountain bike. Catch you guys later. Goodbye.